All right, we're getting ready for clay. Now today you shouldn't be messing with the clay. Today we need to come up with your plan. So for Thursday and Friday, today and tomorrow, you are going to be drawing your rough draft for your clay project. So what is ceramic clay? You might have used it before or maybe not. Now the thing to remember about ceramic clay is that it is not the same as your modeling clays or your Play-Dohs or even polymer clay. All of those are man-made clays. They're made in a factory, but ceramic clay, like this one and those, this is clay that comes from our earth. It is a natural resource of our planet. It is clay that is essentially mud, but it's got all the right chemical components and different minerals and stuff in it to be ceramic clay. You have used ceramic objects in your everyday life that were made out of clay, and so let's see some more examples. These images show some examples of people working with ceramic clay. There's a lot of different ways you can make stuff with it. So up at the top we can see somebody that's throwing. That's how you use the pottery wheel. And so you can make pottery with this type of clay. You can see it's kind of messy. Coil building is what's happening in this image there. So this person is adding coils, rolled up ropes of clay to build something taller and taller. And here we've got an image of somebody that's using slab construction to put some pieces together. So these flat slabs of clay, you are going to be working closest with that technique. So we'll give each of you a slab of clay to start with. Now ceramic clay is what's used to make your nice dishes at home. Your heavy plates, the ones that are like glass, those were once clay, but after somebody made them into plates and bowls and coffee mugs and stuff, they were fired in a kiln. All of these examples you can see have some really awesome texture added on top of the surface. That is what we need to see from you. So we're going to practice adding textures to the surface of clay, and that's what this project is going to be all about, is how well you can add textures. Hello all. Today I'm talking about your first steps with clay. Now, if you are one of my people who is at home, my virtual students, you will need to come pick up a bag of clay at the school. They are waiting for you. Your parents got an email about the location for where you can come to pick up the clay, so please come out and do that. Pro tip, if you're paying attention to this, when they come to pick up the clay, the ones that are in the small bag are going to be, the clay is going to be harder to take out of the bag. So if you get here and there's plenty that are left in the big bag, I would grab one of those, just to make your life a little easier. When you get your clay, do not remove it from the bag. You know we've had a lot of rain recently, and when that happens, that means that there's a lot of moisture in the bag. If you try to take the clay out of the bag right now, what will likely happen is you will rip this whole piece of clay that is so nicely cut into a flat slab for you. I have a trick for how to take the clay out of the bag, and I will tell it to you on Monday, which is when we're actually starting. So let your clay sit in the bag, don't smash it or anything, so that it's ready to go on Monday. Today, we're going to start drawing out your rough draft design for what you're going to make with the clay. Here's what we're going to do. Texture tiles. You have seen these in some of my other videos. So these are all texture tiles. What I want to talk about today with texture though is that there's two kinds of texture. There's additive texture and there's also subtractive texture. Now, adding and subtracting, you guys should know all about what that means. When we're talking about textures that are added, that means that they have been stuck onto the surface of the clay so that they stick up off of the surface. Just like the textures that you made out of cardboard and paper and scraps that you could find at your house. These are all added textures. You didn't carve down in and take away anything. You added and built up on top. And so when we're talking about added textures and subtractive textures, what I mean there is that the pieces that have been attached onto the surface have been added up onto the surface, and where you scratch into the clay, that is where it's subtractive. We want to see more additive. Subtractive is what you might have done in elementary school, where you took your clay and then you drew lines into it. Yeah. We all did that. Now we're moving on and we're adding textures. So you are making a texture tile. It will probably be bigger than these though. These are 2 inches by 2 inches. For yours, what I would do is get your clay from the school and then find a random piece of paper at your house and figure out about how large of a tile you think you can make. But you're gonna need some extra clay to make all of these cool things that you're gonna add onto the surface. So the entire piece of clay can't be your tile. It's not gonna be that big. So it's gonna be about a size smaller so that all that extra around the outside will become what you use to make your textures and attach them to the surface. So you're gonna make a tile that is a square, or I mean, honestly, it could be a rectangle if you want. But we want it to be just a little bit smaller than your piece of clay. So if I did this, okay, so I've got about this much extra in there, and if I had a square about that big, and if I wanted to cut it out, then I could trace it. All right, I've made my own stencil. If I make a tile that is not crooked, if I make a tile that's about this big, then you can see that all of the extra around the outside, that's what I'll have to add on. I feel like that's not quite enough extra, so I'm gonna trim it just a little more. All right, that seems like a little bit more extra clay around the outside. So all this outside stuff is what I'm gonna use to make all my little fun stuff that I'm gonna attach to the surface. This square is about, I would say 3 inches by 3 inches. So if you haven't gotten your clay yet, then you can start today's assignment with just a 3 inch by 3 inch square. And you are going to start designing your tile, your square, that's going to have textures on it. So what I'm doing now is I'm tracing this paper that I made. All right, here's gonna be my rough draft. And so come up with an interesting design that you are going to fill with cool textures. We're drawing it onto a piece of paper. Remember, we want to see additive textures, okay? Plus, additive. We need to see additive textures. We need to see at least three different additive textures. So on this example that I have, I made these additive textures, which were all little skinny pieces that I overlapped onto each other. I made these additive textures, which was like a long skinny cylinder I rolled out, and then I cut it into pieces and I attached it. And then I made these additive textures, which each one was like a tiny jelly bean that I would squish on there and overlapped them. And this was the design that I came up with, was these swooshing kind of lines for these spaces. Now you can see that in here I have poked a tool down into the surface to make some subtractive textures. If you want to put some subtractive textures into yours, you definitely can. This student put some subtractive textures onto each of their additive textures, which is also okay. Now, once you start coming up with your design, another thing that you should be thinking about is finding tools. So my people who are at home, plastic fork works so well for so many things. So if you could find a plastic fork, then that is going to be an excellent tool for you to use. My favorite tool to use when working with clay is this one right here. It's a skewer. I bought a pack of these at Walmart like 5 years ago, and I still have a bunch of them. So this tool right here is great because it's got a pointy part that you can use for carving and smoothing out things. And then it's got this flat circle part on the other end that is nice for some other cool stuff that you can do. If you don't have a skewer like this, a really sharp pencil will also do, so I would sharpen this one. Just know that it's gonna get really dirty. You can clean it off when you're done. So I would go out and find some tools that you might be able to use at your house. Start drawing out a design that's interesting that you can put some textures into. Monday is when we are going to actually use the clay. So get ready for clay, drive up to the school, come get it. It's on Miss Brown's back porch. That's the same place you got the big paper at the beginning of the year. And so for now, leave the clay alone. We are coming up with a design that's got 3 additive textures. So some important information has just come up. I told you guys that this was a 3" by 3" square, but I lied. I just got a ruler and checked, and it's much closer to a 4" by 4" square. So today's to-do list. Virtual people, you need to go get your clay. Find some tools around your house. Plastic fork works really well. A skewer or something pointy or a pencil is also a helpful tool to have. If you need to go out and purchase something, that's fine. We're not actually going to start working with the clay until Monday. Now, everybody needs to start working on your rough draft sketch. That is this right here. So you're drawing out your design and show me 3 added texture areas at least. And so tomorrow I'm going to show you some examples of some different textures that you can make with clay, and you might really like some of those.